everyone!
Hey, welcome to Happiness Punch. Today we're going to finish up our series on emotional and mental wellness. And we're going to show you how everything you ever need to know about emotions you learn from the Super Bowl.
That may sound silly, but it's a pretty good example.
No, it's quite true. But before I get started, I just have to point out that we're kind of doing the powder blue and powder pink thing today.
Got the boy girl.
Yeah, it was an accident. It's an accident, but I don't know, it's just kind of like I feel like I'm in a nursery. Like there should be like a baby or something laying around, but anyway. Yeah. Oh, no, that's not an announcement.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So, and I thought with Super Bowl, I thought I would talk about Tom Brady. Because Tom Brady brings out every emotion that really there is known to man. Good and bad. So if you watched our video last week, we talked about positive emotions, negative emotions, and the object of those emotions.
Yeah.
And now, anger has a particular kind of object, and fear is a different kind of emotion than impatience, and then we talked about joy and desire.
Right.
And love and so on. So we're going to kind of walk through the experience of a Super Bowl. So, and what it teaches us about our emotions. Everything I said last.
We should have made Super Bowl appetizers for this.
Yeah, I know. It's not that season of life though. It's spring.
I know.
We want to get going with baseball.
Right.
Which is why I'm wearing my baseball cap. But at any rate, Tom Brady's been all over the news lately because he's switched teams and everybody's dying to know if he's as good as he seems to be. So if he tries a new team, maybe he'll
do
better.
Something different. Yeah.
But you either love him or you hate him. So that's sort of the basic divide of emotions, right? Remember we talked about hate? You hate what you think is pure evil, and some people just think Tom Brady is pure evil. And then you love what you think is pure good, and some people just think he can do no wrong. And
we kind of just marvel at our house, don't we?
Well, I don't know. There's a little bit of each. Some people we won't go into all that. But then underneath each of those basic categories, there's sort of like, these different, sort of sub-emotions that go under love and hate.
Yeah.
Okay. So now, Super Bowl is an interesting event because it's like a roller coaster of emotion. And I want to go back.
Sweaty palms.
I'm from Seattle, so I want to go back to the Super Bowl when the Patriots stole the Super Bowl from the Seattle Seahawks. Or the Seattle Seahawks gave up the game and lost it.
However you want to look at that.
Yeah, it depends on how you want to interpret that. So, and that's why people hate him, because Brady does that all the time. Like,
he's a stinker that way.
You think you got it in the bag, and that's always the biggest mistake. As soon as a team goes to that place in their mind, it's over.
He has composure of steel, I like to think.
and that's what's really interesting is as a quarterback, the guy's mental and emotional focus is really remarkable. That's what, besides his athleticism, that's what makes him such an incredible athlete. So, if you think about the pregame time, so let's put ourselves into the category of the athletes and the fans, right? So everybody's kind of nervous and anxious, right?
Sweaty palms.
And it's because, the desired goal, right? The thing that we love is victory. We want to win, right? So everybody's sort of, but the other team is like a threat.
Yeah.
So you feel kind of nervous, right? You feel nervous because, and anxious, and there's some fear there because the other team, depending on who you're rooting for, is like, you don't know if you're going to beat them or not.
Yeah.
So there's an uncertainty there. So that's kind of like fear. Fear is sort of like, it's this imminent danger or threat that you think you might be able to defeat and conquer, but you're not 100% sure. Okay, so that's what you feel when you're nervous and anxious in anticipation.
Yeah.
Of course, the goal, that what ultimately gives rise to you is the desire to win.
That big trophy.
Yeah, you want to win the trophy. So that's your desire, and that desire gives rise to the fear because you're not sure, either side is not sure if you can do it. Now, it's really interesting because people...
I think my pulse rate is going up just putting myself back
about
in
it. Yeah. So now, when people have to go up against the New England Patriots in the last, however many years, especially if that team's kind of a rookie team, they're pumped up. So they're getting themselves pumped up, and there's a certain kind of an anxious nervousness on the field beforehand because,
Yeah.
They got to get themselves really geared up for this competition, okay? And it's Tom Brady, it's the Patriots, it's Belichick, it's all
Right.
this. And they're a force to reckon with. And a lot of people in the back of their mind probably are feeling this doubt. It's like, we have to beat these guys, but can we?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of nerves on the field. Now, because the Patriots have gone to the Super Bowl so many times, they don't necessarily come to the field with quite the same nerves and anxiety. So sometimes that doesn't work out for them well, and they get behind and they ended up losing. But more often than not, they win, right? So they come in a little bit more calm and a little bit more confident because the other team isn't quite as threatening. As they don't feel that to the same extent, okay? So everybody's kind of nervous. Okay, now what ends up happening is that so the game begins and it starts. And what typically happens is that the Patriots are a little slow in the start, in the first quarter, maybe even the first half.
Oh, yeah.
And this is happening a couple times. The
Two
other
very
team,
different halves.
The other team gets ahead.
Yeah.
Got ahead. So the other team gets ahead, and the Patriots fall behind.
We were so excited.
Yeah,
At
and
our house.
looked like Seattle was gonna run away with the Super Bowl. Yeah. Anyway, but it was kind of a close game, if I recall. Like, it was kind of back and forth, and it was a high-scoring game. It was a lot of fun. But as the game goes on, as we get on the other half, and we start descending down towards the final minutes of the game. So there's like the 9-minute mark, and you're like, there's still a lot of time, so there's still hope. There's still a feeling of hope on the field if it's a close game. But there's still a lot of nerves. And what you notice is that suddenly the threat, both teams feel like the threat there of the other team is something that can be conquered. And so now the anger arises. And the game gets kind of scrappy.
A little tense.
And the tempers and the little pile-ups and the shoving. Yeah, and the refs have to get in the middle.
Yeah.
So anger rises. And so it gets really intense. And then as you continue to sort of move through that time, it starts descending down on the 2-minute mark. And it might still be like a back and forth kind of game. It's like a 3-point spread, or maybe it's just one touchdown. And you're like, what's going to happen? But what's really fascinating is to watch the faces of the fans at this point in the game. To watch the faces of the fans and the faces of the players at this time. So, if there's a great play and a team scores and pulls ahead, there's just this immediate ecstatic enthrallment, yes. And you're they're almost resting in the victory.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the joy of victory,
so bad.
And everybody's like, really excited, but then all of a sudden it's like, so in this particular game, my recollection is that, with very little time left in the game, right, the Patriots are down. It looks like Seattle has got it, and the Patriots take the ball deep in their own territory, and they have to go all the way down, and they have 2 minutes or something. Okay, so you think, so now everybody all of a sudden turns kind of like a pale or white, right? So what's going to happen? Because he's completing passes. So now you see ecstasy, exaltation, happiness, joy. Starts at this, people's faces just drop, and all of a sudden it's like, oh no.
It becomes very serious.
Yeah, right.
Intense.
Now I don't remember all the 6. I should go back and watch the reruns.
Yeah.
I should have, because there was, so Seattle gets that score at the end, and everybody thinks they have it in the bag. So there's rejoicing, there's joy, there's exaltation, and then there's that last play. Brady throws deep, they catch it, and I think they score. And then all of a sudden there's no time left on the clock. So they go from just ecstatic excitement to just complete devastation and defeat. So what's amazing is you go from being really nervous and kind of scared, then you go to sort of some confidence, sort of like boldness and fortitude, some courage, we got this. And then you go to this total fear, white pallor of fear, just blank faces, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's happening. And then all of a sudden it just goes just devastation.
Just like that.
And they go from pushing and shoving and being all tough to crying.
Mm-hmm. Oh no!
The team that loses cries. They cry at the end of the game because they're so sad and defeated. So you have this roller coaster of emotions. Now, what I think is interesting about this, because I think it just illustrates how what I have said in the last couple of videos about our emotions. Our emotions are dictated largely by what we perceive with our senses.
Mm-hmm.
And what, so you're watching this game, you're listening to the music, you're watching the big screens, and it's a roller coaster ride watching a championship game like this.
Yeah.
March Madness is the same way with basketball. Like, you experience all of the human emotions. Now, of course, the ultimate object of all these feelings is a game, right? So it's not like the most serious thing in the world. So you can imagine what it's like when it's something
like
really
you're
serious.
going to survive at the end, no matter what happens.
Although I don't know, and people even like
the looks on people's faces, you would wonder, like
when people win, like this last year, they go and they riot. It's really weird. The exaltation and excitement turns into just kind of a reckless, destructive, which is weird.
Yeah.
That's a good example of an extreme reaction, like having a parade. Having some drinks, having a good time.
One thing,
yeah. But notice too, and this is why I wanted to point out Tom Brady said, Tom Brady is like cool and collected and focused emotionally the whole time.
His face doesn't really change.
And it's not even a face game. If you watch him, you can see that his mental activity is focused on, I'm imagining he's being strategic and he's calculating, he's thinking about
what's working, what's not working.
Yeah, and what can be done in this situation. And then he's also I've heard, very encouraging to his players, like, we got this, or, don't worry, we got this, But then when he wins, he gets super excited. And then all this emotion comes out of him.
Yeah.
But what's amazing about it is why he's from the standpoint of being an athlete, he's got a tremendous amount of virtue. I'm not saying that it's necessarily moral virtue that makes him just like a good person simply. I don't know the guy.
Off the field kind of thing?
But as an athlete, in terms of his performance on the field, he has an incredible amount of composure, and he controls his emotional responses, which is that's what makes him so great. I mean,
kind of want to get in his head and hear what it is that he's telling him, like his self-talk.
Yeah.
I would love to hear that.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. But a lot of people can get mad and envious at him because he wins all the time. But it's there's other quarterbacks that are just as athletic as he is. But he has a mental focus. He has an ability to talk to himself and think things that keep him focused on the goal, on the good of the victory. And he's able to ride the ups and downs of the game and keep his focus and keep his team focused. And, it'll be interesting to see what he does this year with Tampa Bay, if he's able to pull that kind of chemistry together with this team. Yeah. And physically he might not, I don't know how good he's going to be physically because he is getting up there. But the point is that it's a great illustration of if you're going to play the game of life and you want to be an emotionally and mentally stable person, you have to acquire the virtues of being able to stay focused on what's real. And you have to be able to keep your thinking positive and on the goal. And you have to sort of ride, be
encouraging to those around you.
He probably feels nervous. He probably feels, even angry at times at his team if they screw up. Probably tempted to celebrate a little too soon when he thinks he's got it in the bag. Right? Those are things that I'm sure he feels. But he feels them in a way that's integrated, which allows him to perform it at his maximum capacity physically, even under situations of incredible pressure and stress. Right. And I've always marveled at that. I've always admired him as an athlete for that. And it's the very thing that people also hate about him, is because it's like he just seems to have...
stone-faced almost, kind of. But it's a composure that's really admirable.
So if we're going to play at the game of life, right, we have to learn some of those same practices. And part of what keeps us healthy is that we can stay focused mentally. We can not allow ourselves to feel too much or too little emotion. Obviously, like, even on his emotions aren't underwhelming because he knows how to pump up his team, right? But it's not an overreaction. He stays cool and until he wins. And when he wins, then he just celebrates, and you can, he's really good at cheering and putting his arms up in the air. But he doesn't celebrate too soon. I've always noticed that about him. And he doesn't feel defeated too soon. He plays to the very, very end. And sometimes, he wins more often than not, obviously. But sometimes he loses, even though he does that. And sometimes, you just don't have the perfect chemistry. It doesn't work You know, and life throws things like that at us too. There's just times in which we just can't completely pull together. But anyhow, so that was my little Super Bowl analogy. I just think that every human emotion is on display during the Super Bowl. And then there's also the halftime show, which can make you either feel lusty or completely contemptuous, depending on how you feel about some of those halftime shows. But, you know, I guess I can throw that in there for good measure, because we didn't talk about those emotions.
That's the viewer emotions can be really, you know, a major, big time experience. But I guess for life, you know, it's kind of interesting to think, okay, here, you know, rough moments coming. You could think about Tom Brady, you know, and try to put on your cool cat, be in charge of your thoughts and direct those and your emotions to good places, to healthy places, you know, where the outcome can be positive, you know, even if you lose.
Yeah. And the thing is even when he does lose, he always goes back and tries to learn from his experience, figure out what to do differently, and comes back ready to go the next season.
And composure in life is always a win, don't you think?
Yeah.
It's always a win. So, good lessons from Tom Brady.
Yeah. So maybe he'll watch this because he'll see his name on YouTube.
We're gonna hashtag him.
Yeah, right. I don't know who these two yokels from Western PA are, but anyhow. Yeah. All right. So that's our last little video on emotional and mental health, and we're going to go on next time to talk more about virtue and sort of how we make the right choices in life and exercise the faculty of our will in a way that really helps us to continue to grow and to bring homeostasis to our life and healthiness, because we can make good choices, we can make bad choices,
and we can recover, you know, too.
Yeah,
so just the recovery aspect.
Exactly. Okay, so next time, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends and subscribe and like us and all the other desperate things that we feel like you have to say on a YouTube at the end of a YouTube video. And then watch us. We'll be back next time.
We'll be back. All right.
See
Bye.
ya. Bye.